Hello YouTubers, and today I'm going to be reviewing Wallace and Gromit The Collection 4K Blu-ray, and in this video I'll be discussing, whether this, is worth the upgrade, particularly from this is the 2009 Complete Collection. Obviously, the reason that they can't call this one the Complete Collection is because, well, it's very quickly going to be outdated on Christmas Day when Vengeance Most Foul comes out, but this is something I've wanted for a while, for the original, Wallace and Gromit shorts to actually get a release on 4K Blu-ray. But is it worth it? Turning to the packaging, here we get a slipcover, which, standard, and it's just in a standard 4K Blu-ray case. Now, in the US, it's available as a Shout Factory limited edition version, and the difference with that version is that that one includes Curse of the Were-Rabbit, whereas this does not. However, Curse of the Were-Rabbit is only on Blu-ray, so you're not getting an additional 4K transfer with that. Also, this one has a few special features which are not on the Shout Factory version, I think due to rights issues and that. So, yeah, plus the UK version is far cheaper, and that at £30. Compared to, I think the cheapest I've ever seen the Shout Factory version for is £80 to get it imported. So, yeah, if you live in the UK, definitely get, this version, though, should you? Let's get into it. So, let's start in chronological order. So, in A Grand Day Out, the first thing I did notice is that the stabilization was noticeably worse in places, mainly just at the beginning where there's a few bits of wobbly bits in the living room on the film, though I will say it was a noticeable improvement, and that the clarity was slightly better and it was obviously sharper, but something this release is missing is HDR. Yeah, this is, as far as I'm aware, the only 4K Blu-ray, at least that I know of, that does not have HDR of any kind, which I really don't understand why. Because if you're going to go to the effort and do new 4K transfers and that and restoration, why not do it in HDR, especially when you're releasing it on 4K Blu-ray? So, yeah, that is a really weird anomaly, and it means that, basically, it'll be harder for most people to tell a difference between the original Blu-ray release and this release, mainly because, it's just a resolution bump compared to, having HDR and having a wider colour gamut and that compared to it. So, I have no idea why they did this. It's really weird that the fact that they, didn't do this for this release. Now, I can immediately tell the difference, but then again, I'm incredibly familiar with this. I watch Wallace and Gromit several times a year, at least 4 times a year every year. So, yeah, I was instantly able to tell the difference, but it's not a night and day difference type of thing. So, for example, because of this better clarity that we had previously, some things that were a flaw on the Blu-ray which weren't really noticeable become more noticeable on the 4K Blu-ray. For example, the picture is flickering a bit on the moon where Wallace kicks the ball up into the air. Now, this was present on the Blu-ray, but it wasn't as noticeable. But again, you can see a clarity in that difference in that between the two, and this just seems to be damaging that to the film. But yeah, it is annoying that they didn't fix this. Now, when we get on to particularly wrong trousers and a close shave, this is particularly where issues come about, in that, for whatever reason, this has a new DTS stereo and 5.1 mix of the original audios. But they sound terrible, particularly the stereo track has that really horrible metallic edge. Basically, if for those who remember the Shout Factory Blu-ray that was released some time ago, I think about a year ago now, that one had terrible audio, which I mentioned in my review, and unfortunately this one has that same terrible audio.
Though I might have to make a small adjustment to the drop, a touch painful on re-entry. Cracking toast, Gromit. Though I might have to make a small adjustment to the drop, a touch painful on re-entry. Cracking toast, Gromit.
I will say the 5.1 mixers are okay at best, though the problem is they do sound a bit muffled at times, and they don't have the clarity and that the previous Dolby 5.1 mixers had on the previous Blu-ray release. They just sound worse, and also a lot of people, were hoping that maybe the wrong trousers in this collection would include the original broadcast version where it had Gromit's birthday card playing Happy Birthday rather than for He's a Jolly Good Fellow. Unfortunately, they haven't done that for this release. It is still for He's a Jolly Good Fellow, as well as a couple of other instances as well. So unfortunately, that is not the case with this. So, yeah. Interestingly though, the commentaries that are on here are still the Dolby Stereo versions, the original Dolby Stereo versions, which makes me think, like, why didn't they just use the 5.1 surround sound and stereo masters that they used for the original Blu-ray release on here for the 4K release? Because they sound better. These new remastered versions just sound bad. There's just no way around this. I will say, A Matter of Loaf and Death, although it does have a new DTS surround sound, that one is the only one that sounds perfectly fine. I didn't notice anything about it. A Grande Out also sounds okay, but it does suffer from the audio again being a little bit woolly, a bit muffled in places. Whereas Matter of Loaf and Death pretty much sounded perfectly fine, and that throughout I didn't really notice anything. Something I will say though, A Matter of Loaf and Death is actually running at the correct frame rate this time around, which is 24 frames a second, whereas the original Blu-ray release was running at 25 frames a second. So basically, there's now just about nearly a minute's difference between the two of them now, which is something I'll get onto, which is important for later on. Going back to a close shave, unfortunately it is using the cropped 14:9 version rather than the open matte 4:3 version, which I think was only used for its VHS releases and its original DVD release, at least here in the UK. Which, yeah, I don't know why they're using the cropped version rather than the open matte, 4:3 version. So, yeah. It's a bit annoying that they're doing that. Turning to special features on here, well, the Blu-ray that is included on here is just a recycled Blu-ray from the 2009 version. So you get all of the special features that were included on this 2009 version, and that because, again, it's just a recycled disc. Now, this does have a bonus disc as well, which includes A Grand Night In, which is a documentary in that about Wallace and Gromit and, a bit of Aardman and that themselves, which is a really good documentary. It is available on their YouTube channel, so if you haven't seen it, it is on their YouTube channel. And something else that is on their YouTube channel, which hasn't been released on Blu-ray in the UK before, which is Cracking Contraptions. This is something that has only been released physically in HD once, and that was on the US previous Shout Factory release, which thankfully, compared to that release, the audio for Cracking Contraptions on this release sounds perfectly fine. So, yeah, Cracking Contraptions sounds perfectly fine. They didn't mess up the audio, and that with that one compared to the previous US Blu-ray where the audio on Cracking Contraptions also had that really metallic sounding edge where the audio was sounding a bit compressed. So, overall, what do I think of this and that? And is it even worth it? Well, here's the thing. If you're more of a casual viewer, and that particular of Wallace and Gromit, just, if you haven't already picked up this Blu-ray, just pick up the Blu-ray. And that. This collection also comes on Blu-ray as well, which includes the bonus disc, but this one again you can find for very, very cheap, like under a £5. Cheap. So that would be what I recommend, to most people. But is this worth an upgrade? Well, if you're a die-hard Wallace and Gromit fan, then yes. But what I would highly suggest, and what I have done, is I have ripped the 4K Blu-ray as well as the regular Blu-ray. And what I've done is, in fact, I did a separate video on this channel talking about how to do this. So if you don't know how to do this, I've done a separate video on this. I've taken the Blu-ray audio for A Grand Day Out, Wrong Trousers and Close Shave and basically added it to the 4K. So my 4K rip now has the Dolby Digital 5.1 and stereo masters on there. So I can watch them in 4K, but with the good audio. I can't do that for Matter of Life and Death, for the reason I said before, is that the Blu-ray is running at 25 frames a second, whereas the 4K is running at 24, so unfortunately the two don't line up. Obviously I could change the speed of the audio and make them match up that way. But as I said, since Matter of Life and Death was the only one that sounded perfectly fine on this Blu-ray release anyway, sorry, 4K Blu-ray release anyway, I didn't bother doing that with that one. It also meant I was able to add my original restored version of the Wrong Trousers original audio, where basically it was a splice together of a UK Blu-ray, a German Blu-ray, and a US DVD, and that to restore it to its original glory, which this hasn't done. In terms of special features, well, unfortunately, this doesn't offer anything new. As I said before, it is nice to have, cracking contraptions physically on Blu-ray at last, and it's also nice, to have a grand night in documentary in that. It is nice, but again, in terms of other special features it's offering new, it doesn't have HDR, as I said before, which is the biggest, why out of this one. So yeah, I'd say if you're into ripping your 4K Blu-rays, then this is worth it, particularly, if you put the original audio tracks back onto the 4Ks, then, they sound good and you can watch them and that happily. But if you're not able to do that or don't know how to do that, then I really struggle to recommend this to people, particularly, at £30 and that for the price. Like, if they all, had those 5.1 surround sound masters and that, then I'd find it an easier sell. But the fact that the audio for, most of it is either okay at best or terrible, depending on whether you select a 5.1 or stereo, and yeah, it just doesn't sound good, unfortunately. So I am disappointed in this release. I am disappointed in it. But at least we do have 4K, masters of it now. So yeah, hopefully, since they have done 4K transfers of it now, maybe someday down the line, in like another 10 or 20 years, however long it takes, hopefully, they go back on this and give it, the proper HDR treatment it needs, and give it, the audio it deserves. The only reason I can think of that they did DTS masters for this is that they didn't want to pay Dolby a license for that. So yeah, the screenshot, obviously they still use the Dolby audio for the commentaries and that, so yeah, I don't know what it is and that about that. But anyway, that's it for this review, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.